night my brother announced his engagement party, I was elbow deep in quarterly reports and hadn't slept in 36 hours. My assistant forwarded the email from my mother. Subject line, family gathering, mandatory. No date, no venue, just that one word, mandatory. No date, no venue, just that one word, mandatory. Like I was still 17 and grounded for coming home past curfew. I almost didn't go. I should have trusted that instinct. My name is Lena Marsh. I'm 31 years old. And for the past 6 years, I have been the managing partner of a private equity firm that currently holds positions in 14 mid-sized companies across the Southeast. Our portfolio is worth, give or take, depending on the quarter, somewhere north of $800 million. I have 32 people on my direct team. I have a driver I call twice a week and a standing reservation at a restaurant in Midtown Atlanta where the sommelier knows my order before I sit down. My family thinks I do some kind of finance stuff and live in a one-bedroom apartment I can barely afford. I let them think that. For a long time, I thought it was the smart play. Turns out it just gave them more time to perfect their aim. Here's the thing about growing up the middle child in a family like mine. You learn early that love is conditional, and the conditions are always changing. My older brother, I'll call him my brother, because that's what he is by blood if nothing else, was the golden one. Varsity everything. Scholarship to Georgia Tech. Married well, or so my parents believed, to a woman named Kelsey who wore her highlights like a crown and treated family dinners like networking events. My younger sister was the baby, the delicate one, the one my mother still called by her childhood nickname even when she was 26 and getting her nails done every 2 weeks on my parents' credit card. And then there was me. I left home at 18 with a full ride to a school nobody in my family could pronounce correctly, and came back 4 years later with a finance degree and exactly 0 job offers in Atlanta. I took a position in Chicago, then New York. Then I came back south when my partner and I launched the firm 6 years ago out of a shared office space with bad Wi-Fi and one working espresso machine between us. I did not tell my family, not the details anyway. I told my mother I worked at a small investment company. She told her friends I worked in banking the same way you'd say someone worked in food service, apologetically. Like it explained something unfortunate about my personality. My brother's engagement party was held on a Saturday in March at my parents' house in Buckhead, not a small house. My father did well in commercial real estate in the 90s, and they'd lived in the same 7,000 square foot colonial since I was in middle school. I grew up in that house. I knew every creak in the staircase and every blind spot in the kitchen and exactly which drawer my mother kept the things she didn't want us to find. I drove myself. I almost always drove myself. The driveway was already full when I got there. I recognized my aunt's Lexus and my cousin's pickup and a handful of cars I didn't know. Through the front window I could see movement. People with wine glasses, my mother in a blue dress moving between clusters of guests like she was conducting something. I sat in my car for 4 minutes. I know because I checked my phone twice. Then I went inside. The first person to greet me was my aunt, who said, "Oh, Lena, you came," with the specific kind of surprise that means she expected me to flake. The second person was my mother, who kissed my cheek and said, "You look tired, sweetheart," which in our family is not a compliment. The third was my brother, who was across the room with his arm around Kelsey and didn't look up. I got myself a glass of sparkling water and found a spot near the fireplace. The thing about being underestimated by people who love you, or people who are supposed to love you, is that it doesn't feel like one big wound. It feels like a slow accumulation of small ones. A comment here. A look there. The way my father asked my brother about his work and then turned to me and said, "And you're still doing your little finance thing?" The way Kelsey looped her arm through my mother's and called her mom and laughed at things I said with this smile that never reached her eyes. The party shifted into the dining room around 7. My mother had done the seating chart herself, which I only know because the handwriting on the cards was hers. I found my card at the far end of the table. next to my cousin's teenage son, who spent the entire dinner with his AirPods half in, and across from my aunt, who had 3 glasses of Chardonnay before the salad course and started telling a story about a cruise she took in 2019 that I'm fairly certain had no ending. My brother and Kelsey sat at the head of the table with my parents. At some point during the main course, my father tapped his fork against his glass and stood up. He gave a toast. It was a good toast. It was a good toast, actually, warm, specific, the kind you could tell he'd written down and practiced. He talked about my brother's work ethic and his ambition and the way he'd built something real. He talked about Kelsey like she'd already been part of the family for years. He cried a little. My mother reached up and took his hand. Nobody looked at me. I held my water glass and watched and told myself it was fine. I had practice at telling myself it was fine. After dinner, the guests filtered into the living room. Someone put on music. I was helping carry plates to the kitchen. Old habit, I always ended up clearing tables at family events, when I overheard my mother and Kelsey talking just around the corner of the butler's pantry. "She looks like she's doing okay," Kelsey said. Her voice had that particular quality of someone being diplomatic. "She's fine," my mother said. "She's always fine. That's Lena. Just gets by. Never quite figures it out." A pause. "She's 31, Kelsey said. Not defending me, just noting it like a data point. "I know." My mother's voice dropped. "I just worry. Her brother had his first management position at 28, and Lena's still just floating." I set the plates down quietly on the counter. I stood very still. I thought about all the things I could have said and calculated very quickly the cost of saying any of them. Then I picked the plates back up and walked into the kitchen and finished clearing the table. Floating. I have personally signed off on 3 acquisitions in the last 18 months. The smallest was $42 million. I have a team of analysts who are sharper than anyone I went to graduate school with. I have missed exactly 1 major holiday in 6 years because I was in Singapore closing a deal, and my mother's response to that was to ask if I'd at least made some nice friends there. But sure, floating, I had planned to leave by 9. I was reaching for my coat in the front hall when I heard my name, loudly, from the living room. It was my brother. He was standing in the middle of the room with his wine glass and that particular expression he'd had since we were children, the one that meant he'd had a few drinks and wanted an audience. The guests who were still there had arranged themselves in a loose semicircle. Kelsey was beside him, smiling. "Lena," he said, "come here. We were just talking about the house." I did not want to go, but I went. "Kelsey and I have been thinking," he said, "about buying a place, something serious. We looked at a few properties in Druid Hills, but honestly, we keep coming back to that development off Peachtree Road, the new construction." He named it. "You know the one?" I knew the one. My firm had a controlling interest in the development company behind it. "I know it," I said. "It's a little out of our range right now," he said, "but we figure family should help family, right? Dad mentioned you might be able to help with the down payment, something like a loan, just to get us started." He said it casually, like it had already been decided, like I was a resource that had been allocated. I looked at my father. My father looked somewhere else. "I mentioned," my mother said carefully, "that Lena might be in a position to help. A small amount, just to get you on your feet." "A small amount," I repeated. "You've been working long enough," my father said, and there was something underneath it, a justification maybe, a way of making the ask sound reasonable. "And your brother has real expenses now. A family to think about. Real expenses. A family to think about. As opposed to me, who was presumably floating through life collecting imaginary debts and attending phantom meetings. I want to be honest about what happened next, because I've thought about it a lot since then, and I want to tell it accurately. I didn't feel angry in that moment. I felt something quieter than anger, something that had been building for a long time and had simply, finally reached the brim. "Which property specifically?" I asked. My brother pulled up something on his phone and showed me. It was a listing I recognized immediately. Unit 4B in the Peachtree Road development, listed at $1.1 million. The builder is Crestline Group, I said. Yeah, that's them, my brother said. Why? You know someone there. I know the company. So you can make a call? Maybe get us a discount or something. He laughed. Kelsey laughed. A couple of the guests smiled. I took a breath. I thought very briefly about just saying no and leaving. I could have done that. I'd done it before. I'd been doing a version of it my entire adult life. Leaving the room, swallowing the thing I wanted to say, deciding it wasn't worth it. But here's the thing. My brother had just asked me, in front of witnesses, to hand him money for a property that I had a financial stake in. And my parents had helped set it up. And Kelsey was smiling. And my aunt was on the couch with her fourth Chardonnay. And the music was still playing. And I was so tired of leaving rooms. I put my coat down. I don't know someone at Crestline Group, I said. I'm one of the principal investors in Crestline Group. My firm holds a 31% equity stake in the parent company. I've been in 3 meetings with their development director in the last 4 months. The room went quiet. Not dramatically, just the way a room goes quiet when everyone's recalibrating at the same time. What? My brother said. My firm, I said again. Private equity. We've been operating for 6 years. Our current portfolio is valued at approximately $840 million. That number changes quarterly, but that's roughly where we are right now. Nobody said anything. My mother's expression was doing something complicated. My father had put his glass down. Lena, my mother started. I didn't tell you because I needed to know something, I said. I wasn't raising my voice. I didn't need to. I needed to know how you treated someone you thought had nothing, because I grew up in this house and I watched who got the toast and who got seated at the end of the table, and I heard what you said in the kitchen tonight. About floating. My mother's face changed. I heard everything. My brother took a step forward. Okay, but that doesn't mean I'm not finished. I said it quietly and he stopped. You didn't ask me here tonight because you wanted to celebrate. You asked me here because you needed something from me, and you thought the ask would land differently if I still believed you all thought of me as the one who never quite figured it out. I looked at my father. Did you really think I hadn't figured out why you were so insistent I come tonight? After years of holidays where nobody called until the food was already on the table? My father didn't answer. The down payment you're asking for, I continued. For a $1.1 million property, that's not a small amount. That's not a loan between family members. That's a financial transaction, and I would want it documented as one with terms and interest and a repayment schedule, which is exactly what any other investor in that development would require. I picked up my coat from the chair where I'd put it. I'm not saying no. I'm saying I won't be your bank while also being the person you seat next to the 15-year-old with his headphones in. Kelsey had stopped smiling. You could have just told us, she said finally. Her voice was careful. About the firm. About all of it. I know, I said. And you could have spoken to me like I was a person worth speaking to before you needed my money. We both made choices. My aunt was no longer talking about her cruise. My mother stood up. She crossed the room, and for a moment I thought she was going to hug me, and I didn't know how I would handle that, so I was almost relieved when she stopped a few feet short. I didn't know, she said. Lena, I didn't know, she said. That's exactly what I needed to understand. There's a moment in certain conversations where the air changes and everyone in the room knows that whatever comes after will be different from whatever came before. This was that moment. I could feel it. I think they could too. I told my brother that if he wanted to discuss the property seriously, as a business conversation, with documentation, with a real timeline, he could have his attorney contact mine on Monday. I gave him the name of my firm. He looked at his phone afterward, and I watched his face as he found the website and the portfolio page and the press release from our last close. He didn't say anything for a long time. I said goodnight to my aunt, who grabbed my hand and held it for a second longer than necessary. I said goodnight to my parents. My father hugged me stiffly, the way he hugs when he doesn't know what else to do. My mother said, very quietly, I'm sorry about what I said in the kitchen. I nodded. I didn't say it was okay because it wasn't, and we both knew it. I drove home. The city was quiet. I had 3 texts waiting from my partner asking about a deal that had stalled in Memphis. I answered them. Then I sat in my parking garage for a while without turning off the engine. Here's what I know now. That I didn't let myself know before. Hiding isn't the same as protecting yourself. I thought I was being strategic. I thought I was gathering information, testing the hypothesis, finding out who they really were when the stakes were low. And I did find out. I found out clearly and without ambiguity on a Saturday night in March, with the music still playing in the background and my aunt's Chardonnay glass sweating on the coffee table, but I also let it go on longer than it needed to. I let them keep the version of me that didn't threaten anything. And there's a cost to that, even when you're the one choosing it. My brother called on Tuesday. He didn't call to apologize exactly. He called to ask if I was serious about the property, which I suppose is its own kind of honesty. I told him what I'd told him Saturday. Attorney to attorney. Real terms. He said he'd think about it. Kelsey sent a text on Wednesday. It said, "I think we got off on the wrong foot." I didn't respond because I disagreed with the premise. We got on exactly the foot we were always going to get on. We just finally had the right shoes. My mother called Thursday morning, early, before 8, which meant she'd been up for a while thinking about it. She asked if I wanted to have lunch, just the 2 of us. I said yes, because she's my mother, and because I'm not interested in burning things down, only in refusing to rebuild them the same way. We had lunch at a place she likes in Virginia Highland. She ordered the same thing she always orders. We talked about small things for a while, and then she asked me genuinely to tell her about the firm, what we did, how it started, what it felt like the first time we closed a deal. So I told her. It took most of the afternoon. She cried once, somewhere in the middle, and I pretended not to notice, which is something she taught me. When we left, she held my arm in the parking lot the way she used to when I was small and we were crossing a street together. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. Some things don't need words. Some things don't need words. Some things just need the time you were too afraid to give them. I'm still not sure what comes next with my family. I don't think there's a clean ending to this. No bow, no resolution that makes all the years of small wounds disappear. What I know is that I walked into that party expecting to leave quietly, the way I always left, and I didn't. I picked my coat back up and I stayed in the room. For once, I stayed in the room. And if you've ever been the one who always leaves before it gets too hard, if you've ever made yourself smaller so someone else could feel bigger, if you've been the one at the end of the table so long you stopped noticing the walk, then you already know why that mattered. You already know exactly what I mean. I've been asked since that night whether I regret waiting so long, whether I should have said something sooner, told my family the truth about the firm, about the deals, about what my life actually looked like behind the version I let them keep. And I understand why people ask that. It feels like the obvious question. But I think the more honest question is this. What was I actually protecting by staying quiet? I told myself it was strategy, that I was gathering information, testing the temperature, letting the situation reveal itself. And part of that was true. I did learn something real that night in the kitchen when I heard my mother say I was floating. I learned it clearly without any ambiguity in a way I couldn't have if I'd walked in the door 6 years ago waving a portfolio report. But I also know, and this took me longer to admit, that I was protecting something else too. I was protecting the possibility that I was wrong about them, that if I just waited long enough or succeeded quietly enough or made myself easy enough to be around, they'd come around on their own. That love would catch up to the facts eventually. It doesn't work that way. People don't revise their assumptions about you just because the assumptions are wrong. They revise them when you make it impossible not to. And I'd spent 6 years making it very possible for my family to keep seeing exactly what they wanted to see. What changed that night wasn't just that I told the truth. It was that I stopped making myself responsible for their comfort with it. That's a different thing. I've known people who told the truth and then immediately softened it, walked it back, apologized for the disruption. I've done that myself, in smaller moments. You say the real thing, and then you spend the next 10 minutes managing the fallout so nobody has to sit with the discomfort too long. I didn't do that this time. I said what I said and I let it land. There's something that happens when you stop managing other people's reactions to you. It's uncomfortable at first. The silence in that living room was not a comfortable silence. My brother's face doing its recalculations. Kelsey no longer smiling. My father looking somewhere else. I felt all of that. I'm not going to pretend I stood there unmoved, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in that house in a very long time, which was that I was standing up straight. The thing about making yourself small to fit someone else's expectations is that it costs you something. Every time. It's not free. You don't just shrink in that one room and then walk back out to full size on the other side of the door. It accumulates. 6 years of accumulated smallness is a real weight, and I hadn't noticed how heavy it was until I put it down. My mother and I had lunch. She asked me to tell her about the firm, and I did. She cried a little, and I let her. That afternoon felt like the beginning of something. Not a repair, exactly. More like a first honest conversation after a very long silence. I don't know what comes next. I'm not certain it all gets resolved neatly. But I know I'd rather have the uncertain, honest version than the smooth, comfortable lie. If you've been the one at the end of the table, I think you already know what I'm talking about. You know the specific weight of being known wrong by people who should know you better, and you probably also know the particular fear of correcting them. Because what if the correction doesn't take? What if you show them the real thing and they still choose the version they invented? That's the real risk. Not the confrontation. The possibility that it won't matter. But here's what I know now. You don't do it for them. You do it because you are not required to be the smaller version of yourself just because someone else finds it easier to love. The people who are worth keeping will adjust. And the ones who can't, well, that's information too. Stay in the room. Tell the truth. Let it land. The rest is up to them.